Hey guys, it's Amber. Today I'm featuring some non-traditional pastel colors for autumn and holiday cards. Whether you enjoy layer stamping, three-dimensional dies, or coloring with markers, there are designs here for you featuring new Altenew products. To kick off the designing, I'm going to start with the Grape Leaves 6x8 stamp set. There are 3 leaves with 2 layers each, an outline and a solid layer. It also has a coordinating die, which includes a shadow die for the Hello sentiment stamp that's included with the stamp set. So inside the product insert, you have lots of design ideas, and I was taken by the kind of bright, non-traditional colors that they have in that card in the upper left, the blues and the pinks. And so that's what kicked off my design for this. I went with lighter, more pastel colors, but that was the inspiration I had for this. Now, the first thing you want to do, especially with your solid stamps, is condition them. You can see I've rubbed my palm over that stamp and it's nice and cloudy. The one on the bottom still had some shiny areas, so I'm just going to rub my palm over it again. You can still see a little bit of shine. So I'm going to do it one more time until the entire surface of the stamp is cloudy. That's going to help the ink adhere to the stamp so that you get a smooth stamping. If your stamp is shiny, the ink is going to pull up and you're not going to get a smooth image. So you can either rub your palm over it like I did, or an eraser, or some people will stamp it with like an embossing ink. Any of those will work. So I've inked up these images with Minty Mint, Frayed Leaf, and Mountain Mist inks. And then I'm going to bring in some soft lilac. So I wanted some color variation to these leaves. You know, most of the time when you see leaves, it's not just one solid color. I'm not going to be using the outline stamps, but I'm going to create an extra layer by using that same solid stamp twice. So I'll test it out on just the top left leaf first. So I've inked it up with soft lilac, and then I've taken some of that ink off with a microfiber cloth. So I can see that I've taken too much ink off, so I'll go ahead and ink up the stamp again and try that one more time. This time I'll take off less with the microfiber cloth. So I'll just dab in a couple places. The ink is so light, it's hard to tell how much ink is actually on the stamp, but I like how that looks. So I'll go ahead and do this with the Mountain Mist and the soft lilac. And then for the Frayed Leaf ink, which has a little more yellow in that color tone, I'm going to use Cotton Candy. And because I'm using pink and green, your red and green are going to make brown, which is perfect because these are fall leaves. So it's still going to have a tinge of pink to it. It's not going to turn super brown, but I love that variation in color. To finish the card, I've stamped in clear heat embossed a leaf frame from the Autumn Bounty stamp set. I'll show you that in a minute. And I'm going to pop this up on the card. So because I have the white panel in the center, I'm able to put some foam tape underneath the vellum to elevate it from the card, which casts a really pretty shadow. I loved these pastels so much that I carried them into the rest of the cards. So here's the Autumn Bounty stamp set. That's the leaf frame that I used. I stamped this pumpkin. I'll show you that in a minute. But I wanted to show you the stamp set first. So this is Autumn Bounty. 2 large stamps in there, and then just a ton of sentiments. You have lots of ideas inside of your product insert, and then also some additional stamp sets that you can pair these with very easily. Okay, so I have a piece of Nina Classic Crest Solar White, A2 size, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 in my Mini Misty, and I'm going to stamp the pumpkin with Morning Frost, which is a really light gray dye ink. I want to do some alcohol marker coloring, so I have my artist markers here, and I will have all of the colors listed on my blog post, and then I also have them listed here. I don't use the same pattern, I don't think, with each segment of the pumpkin. You know, I might start with a different color, so I don't think that matters too much, but basically here I started with Frayed Leaf, then a little bit of Mountain Mist, then I came in with some Sea Glass. And basically, I'm trying to get a similar effect that we created with the grape leaves that we did in the previous card. So this is blush. So I'm using a lot of the pastel colors. So basically these are the latest colors of multiple sets of the Altenew artist markers. And I'm just blending those together to create a similar multicolored pastel look. Now this isn't something that I've done before, taken shades that are totally not related and colored quite like this before. So right about now at this point, I'm looking at this and I'm like, I don't think this looks very good. But I just kept going, thinking that the segments collectively would look much better than the one small piece. So my biggest advice to anyone who's coloring and learning to color and maybe not happy with the project that you're working on, just keep going. Keep going to the very end until you can see the final result. You know, there's that ugly duckling stage in watercolor that people talk about all the time, like it's going to look really ugly before it looks great. That's the same with other coloring mediums as well. So here for these little leaves, I am using limestone and then a little bit of blush on the end of those leaves. For the stem, I'll use Morning Frost, limestone, and blush. And then I'm coming back in with the darker color, which is limestone, and just adding a little bit more shadow and depth, particularly where the stem meets the pumpkin. And then I decided that I wanted my leaves to be green, so then I'm just coming back over that with frayed leaf, but it also has multicolor, so it looks really pretty. Now, this flower looks like a hot mess, you guys. So at this point, I was really having to trust the process even more. So I started with blush, then I came in with rouge, which is a little bit darker of a pink, and then I came in with a little bit of the grays to give some shadow. For this flower here, I'm using sea glass, a little bit of mountain mist, a little bit of the limestone, and then I'll use limestone and Morning Frost on the last flower to keep it white. Now, I lost a lot of definition in those flowers. Like I said, they look like a hot mess. So the fix for that is to just come back in and restamp it. Fortunately, I still had my stamp in my Mini Misty. So I stamped it again in Evening Gray, which is just one shade darker than the Morning Frost that we used in the beginning. For the sentiments, I used that same Morning Gray, and I love how it turned out. I think it's a really unique look. It kind of looks like one of those fancy decor pumpkins that you would buy or make. Switching gears, we're going back to our layer stamping. I have Obsidian pigment ink here, and I'm stamping the image from Positive Vibes onto a piece of Neenah Classic Cross Solar White. Here's the product insert. It's a lovely pre-arranged floral. I absolutely love that. It just makes things so easy, right? Everything fits into its little place. Layer stamping is super fast and quick. And so I do love it when things are pre-arranged. I have layer A1 loaded into my Mini Misty, and I'm going to ink that up with blush ink. So we're carrying over those same colors. For the second layer, A2, I'm going to use Rouge, which is the next darkest color. The leaf clusters are separated into two stamps, and so for the first layer, I'll do Frayed Leaf. For the second layer, I'll use Forest Glades, which is the next darkest shade. For the sentiment, I'll go back to the Obsidian pigment ink, and then to create a little bit of a background, I'm going to flick on Forest Glades metallic ink spray. So I take the nozzle out, I kind of knock off the majority of the ink back into the bottle, and then just flick it onto the project. Here's the finished card. It's a very simple, one layer, clean and simple card, and I love how Altenew has really simplified things by keeping the number of stamps in this layering set to a minimum. Love it. Moving on to Kind Reminder stamp set. I love, love, love large florals. This one has 3 large blooms with the leaves already connected. It makes me so happy, you guys, when I don't have to mask to add my leaves to a 1-layer card. You have loads of inspiration and perfect pairings in the product insert, and I'm going to stamp up 2 of these images with Moon Rock, which is a darker gray ink. So we're still kind of following along with that same color palette. If you're not real comfortable coloring flowers yet, then this is a great technique to use. Color your background and then add minimal coloring to the flowers. So I've scribbled onto the background with the blush marker, and you can see that it's not smooth coloring. I'm just kind of like slapping the color down. For the leaves, I'm going to scribble on some frayed leaf. I don't even go all the way to the edges. I mostly go down the center of the leaf and then kind of flick out from there. And then I soften those edges with the colorless blender. I do end up coming in with some sea glass or mountain mist around the edges and a little bit more frayed leaf to add some variation of color. But you can see that I still have some white spots in the leaves, so not real careful with the coloring. Here I have the rouge marker, which is a little bit darker than the blush, and I'm coming in and adding a drop shadow around the flowers with the rouge and then blending that out with the blush marker. And so it gives it a bit of an antique kind of look, almost like old paper. For the flowers, I'll scribble on some blush marker and then just blend that out with the colorless blender. Those are the only colors that are going to go on the flowers themselves. Then to pop these flowers off the page, I took a pencil, just a regular graphite pencil, and added some shadows, like you can see that dark gray, and blended that out with a tortillon. I don't have that on film, but it's in a bunch of my other videos, so you can definitely see it in some of my other videos. And I stamped 2 sentiments from the stamp set and finished off the card with some seashore enamel dots. For the last card, I'll use the Poinsettia 3D die set. This die set is amazing, you guys. I am in love with how this card turned out. So I die cut all of the pieces and then just put some tape on the back to keep them in place. I thought it would be easier to color them this way. I'm using the same colors, so the same marker. So frayed leaf in the center, blush at the tips, and I wanted to keep these flowers very light. So rather than using a darker marker to get more dimension, I'm just going to use several layers of that blush marker. So here I have the bullet nib of the blush marker, and I'm using that to add a little bit of texture. Again, this looks like a hot mess. You have to trust the process. So I've used the bullet nib, and then I've also used the side of the marker to get kind of more broad dots on there. Here you can see me doing that there, and it looks a hot mess, you guys. But then I'm going to go over the whole thing with the blush marker again, and it's going to kind of mush all of that texture together. You're going to be left with this mottled appearance that has color variation, and you're not going to see a lot of it, right? Each of your layers is going to cover up the previous layer a little bit. I do have my packaging out on my desk so I can see how these line up. So I've oriented my petals the same as what you see in the packaging, and I'm just using some foam squares right in the middle to add these together. Now, once I get them together, I decide, oh, this would look so much better if the petals were curved. If you look at a poinsettia, they kind of bend on that center point, the vein that goes down the middle. So I'm going to take off the bottom layer just to show you. So I'm going to bend these right at the vein down the center. And then for all of the other petals, I just do them while they're stuck together. And I didn't have any problems with that. But I'd recommend that you do this before you get everything adhered together. And there it is. How awesome is that, you guys? I love the colors. I love that green in the middle. And so we're going to add this to an A2 size card. So I have that same Forest Glades ink spray out. So I'm just going to create a background with this. I'll just check the placement to make sure I have enough splatter. Make sure you let it completely dry and clean up your surface so you don't get stray ink anywhere. I added Tropical Forest enamel dots, and this sentiment is from the Holiday Tags Sentiment Stamp Set that's also new with this release. I think this is just the coolest card. Now, obviously, you cannot just pop this in an envelope and send it in the mail. You would either need to mail this in a card box or hand deliver this one to your special someone. All right, here are all the cards together. This was a longer video than what I normally do, but I hope that you guys enjoyed all the projects, and I am totally digging this color palette. I'm not much for pastels, but I absolutely love how all of these turned out. Be sure to join us on the blog hop and leave a comment along the way on the blog hop for a chance to win prizes to shop Altenew and maybe get some of these newly released goodies. I have a link to that down below with, of course, a link to all of the supplies as well. I'll see you soon with more inspiration. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, liking, and ringing that bell so you don't miss any new inspiration. Here's a couple more videos for you before you leave, and I'll see you real soon.